Hello, Dr. Rao.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. It's so great to have you here and to talk to you today a little bit about burnout so that we can not only share you as one of our partners here at Linden House, but also so we can share your perspective on burnout, a topic that is so important right now, more than ever. But also, we've had some questions come in from our community when they found out that we were going to be interviewing you. So we would love for you to shed some light for those people too. So thank you for being here and welcome.
I'm excited. Thank you.
So let's just start, if it's okay with you, by you introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your practice and what it is that you do.
Sure. I'm an internist. I've been practicing over 30 years of internal medicine. And about 3 years in, I realized that my teachings that I had learned about in medical school and residency was not allowing me to actually heal people. It was more band-aiding people. So I began on a journey of trying to find healing tools, and one of which was acupuncture. So I became an acupuncturist. And along the way, I also became certified in functional medicine and regenerative medicine and anti-aging medicine, which is really a concept of getting back into the physiology of how our body breaks down and looking at the cells and the hormones and the nutrients in our gut and the microbiome and all the things that kind of help keep us whole, but also help cause the breakdown to happen. So for me, the last 12 years in my practice, Shakti Health and Wellness Center has really been about trying to identify root cause and individualize therapies for people which are really about them versus just their diagnosis, for example, because the breakdown of hypertension or high blood pressure is very different for each person, and so something like that needs to be personalized. So I've kind of helped develop this protocol of personalized medicine with looking at nutrients, gut microbiome, hormones, and also incorporating things on how we age better.
Amazing. And on the topic of burnout, I think even when I speak to different people about burnout, everyone has like a different kind of point of view based on their own experience with it or things that they've heard. Never really from a professional a lot of the time. And I mean in everyday life, obviously different medical professionals do have their view too. But can you tell us what burnout is from your perspective?
I'd love to. It is such a big topic to at least recognize. And I think the more employers and employees and management recognize what they look like, it is very critical to performance in any caliber. Burnout doesn't just mean your job. Burnout can mean any commitment that you have, for example, caregiving for a caregiver. Also, burnout is just the exhaustion from an overworking environment and overcommitment, a sense of apathy to your self-care and what's going on. So things that used to bring you joy, you just have no juice in you to appreciate. It's basically a lack of energy, kind of like your battery, your phone is dead, because you haven't charged it. So in my perception, burnout is very important. 50 to 60% of people in different jobs really do complain of high stress, lack of enjoyment, poor working environments, things that are not conducive. And we spend most of our day doing these jobs. So it does affect our health and it does affect our longevity. And as a producer, not just at our job, but how we are showing up for our family and how we are showing up to our community. So I believe that this concept of burnout is critically important. It became really in the forefront with COVID. The term was thrown out around a lot, just like cytokines. But I think it was always there, but we are recognizing it because it was such a cause and effect in the healthcare industry for the burnout of the employees. But it happens everywhere. It happens in every job line, happens in caregiving. So the concept is related to a job or a commitment. And it looks like an apathy, a cynicism, a sense of detachment, and lack of self-care, which can lead to a lot of problems. So that's kind of the foundational beginning. But my perception of all the suffering that I see in internal medicine is related to this concept of how we approach stress. So in my job or in my commitments, I have a level of stress that's obviously there. Stress is just a response for our body for a change. And so if I'm laying in a beach somewhere versus being at my job and my desk and having some executive function issues happening where I need to do something, obviously it's a different stress than me laying on a beach. But that stressor isn't bad or good. That stressor is just to get things done, right? So stress by itself is not a bad word, but the problem with stress is that stress invokes change in our body, which is good. It saves our life. So we have this sympathetic system, which is activated, fight or flight, which gets us moving, high cortisol, adrenaline, gets us moving. This was thousands of years ago set in us to help, evade animals, tigers, famines, threats to our lives. So that hasn't changed in us. We are constantly on the, lookout for things that give us adrenaline surges and things that evoke our cortisol. That's our sympathetic, and that's not bad or good. It just is. Our parasympathetic is our rest and digest. These two systems are part of the autonomic nervous system. They cannot be up at the same time. So this is sympathetic. This is parasympathetic. So what used to happen or should happen, we go through a period of stress and we basically have that goes away, and then we rest and digest. But who does that? we're all on sympathetic overdrive all the time. And so most of what I do in my practice is I figure that this is where the separation of these is where the symptoms are. And so burnout symptoms, exhaustion, lack of empathy, disconnection of brain fog, all those things are these symptoms that are generated from the separation of this parasympathetic and sympathetic. So a lot of the tools that I'm going to be talking about today is really about recharging your battery, is invoking that parasympathetic, that rest and digest system, so that you have the ability for a charged battery to attack whatever is coming at you in that work life, in that commitment life. So for me, burnout is different than depression, but it is also can include some of the same symptoms, but it's removed when you get time off, when you get to relax, when you get to recharge your battery. A lot of those symptoms start to go away. So that's kind of my perception of what burnout is. And it can be in any field and in any household. Even a stay-at-home mom can have burnout. Yeah. Because she still has a job and she still has commitments. A caregiver who's taking care of their kids and their parents can have burnout, even if they love their job, right? Mm-hmm. So it's about commitment and the lack of the battery that's charged for me.
That is such a good explanation. Thank you. I was actually going to say, when you were talking about the symptoms, how I'm sure there's a lot of people who get misdiagnosed with depression or diagnosed with depression a bit prematurely when they're burnt out because they describe some of the symptoms, or, for instance, when I first started really hearing about mental health, it was through online. It weren't at school, it weren't at any of my jobs. It was when the internet became more popular and people were sharing things online. And so before I worked in mental health, I knew that if you stop enjoying things that you love, and if you feel like you can't get yourself going every day, it could be a sign of depression. And so with burnout having that as well, and I guess when you don't treat burnout, you can lead to depression
So absolutely. So there's studies upon studies that show that our hypothalamus and our pituitary, which signal cortisol into our adrenal gland, when that goes awry, when we have an overactive sympathetic nervous system, when we have a disconnect between these two, between our resources of our solutions and our stressors, we are absolutely more inflamed. Inflammation goes up because what is rest and digest? Rest and digest is not just, I have heartburn, I am going to the bathroom 5 times, I have diarrhea. The immune system, the cells that make all the itises in our body, 80% of them reside in the gut. So when our rest and digest system is not active or not happy, we're going to start seeing itises of everything. And guess what an itis of the brain is? Anxiety, depression, memory loss. So those cells in our gut are very critical to our overall well-being. It can show up as hypertension. It can show up as metabolic syndrome, which is increased abdominal weight, lipid abnormalities, glucose abnormalities. It can show up as diabetes, palpitations, insomnia. So many itises in the body, which is inflammation of an organ or a system. Weight gain, for example, is very much related to this concept of imbalance between these two systems. So
Wow.
one, I would say for people is to how I figure out the difference sometimes is just by taking a history, right? To say, I was really doing great until, right? So that until is where the diagnosis can help. And I do think mostly everybody I see who walks in my office, I don't treat them any different based on their diagnosis. I have hypertension, I have insomnia, I have burnout, it's all the same. We're still trying to invoke that rest and digest. We're still trying to get people to sleep restoratively. We're still trying to get the gut better, get the food choices better. So when we talk about the solutions, they're very similar regardless of what your diagnoses are. I'm never minimizing mental health. I'm saying, please find care, get a provider. But the lifestyle choices we make are good no matter what. And our priority and our focus, because when we are down, when we are burnt out, when we're depressed, we don't really want to take care of ourselves. So it is a big mountain to climb when I'm telling patients who say, I'm saying do 1, 2, 3. They don't even want to do 1 because they're wiped out, they're tired. So remember that it can look like a mountain, but as we heal with these small steps, my first thing would be just to recognize that this isn't the rest of your life. This is something that is changeable, and this is something that you have control over, because that lack of control is very overwhelming because you don't have control over your boss. You don't have control over your workspace and your demands on you and everything. What you do have control over is how am I going to think about it and what are the steps I can take to change it. So if I think that not getting that promotion or not getting that project is going to be the end of my life, then that's going to make it worse. But if I think that not getting that project or not having to work with this person that I really don't enjoy working with is just something I have to get through because it gives me flexibility, it gives me an income so I can enjoy my bike riding, I can go on my vacations, I can use this as my resource of I'm going to get through this because this is not the end of my life, but I have all this to look forward to because now I get this freedom and income to be able to do other things I love, right? So it is a reframing, and I'm not saying it's easy, but it starts with our attitude towards the problem. Because we need to be able to say, I am in control. I can control this, even if there's small steps.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. We've had a few questions, as I mentioned earlier, come in. So I am going to jump straight into those and make sure that the community members that sent the questions in get to experience your advice and point of view through this interview. So somebody wrote in and said, I often find myself feeling stressed by work, but I'm not sure if I've reached the point of burnout. How do I know I've reached a point of burnout and something needs to be done?
I think that it's those questions of utter mental, physical, emotional exhaustion is technically a burnout. However, I would say that you don't wake up and become diabetic overnight. It's not like I wasn't diabetic and then I am diabetic next day. So you're not going to be not burnt out and burnt out. It's a spectrum. It's a spectrum of adrenal dysfunction, hormone dysfunction. So if you are thinking you are stressed out, it's an excellent time to do the things anyway, so that you are able to kind of be proactive because you still have the energy just by asking this question. I know you are aware enough to be able to say, what can I do so that I don't become burnt out? So even if technically you're not burnt out yet, you might be heading there based on the stress level. So this is a great time for you to recognize, oh, wow, there are things that I can do. And maybe my sleep priority should change because I'm really not prioritizing sleep because I don't need sleep. But yes, you do. If you're getting to be the point of you're burnt out, everybody needs sleep. It is the number one place I start with most of my patients because we detoxify in our sleep. We make our neurotransmitters in our sleep. We make our growth hormone in our sleep. We need that sleep to be able to recharge us the next day. So I would say, look at your symptoms, even if you're not. So classically, it's lack of empathy. It's not taking care of yourself. It's a complete mental, physical, emotional exhaustion. And it's a lack of kind of, it kind of gets into all of your life, not just your work. But at home, you don't feel like going out. You don't feel like seeing anyone. Those are the classic symptoms. But like I said, it's a spectrum. So because of our stress levels, I would say, please start implementing some of these tools. And that could be just prioritizing your sleep, stopping your notifications 2 hours before. We can go into more of the details of what else to do. But I think just asking the question, I think you're on that path. So we want to stop it.
Exactly. And it's good to identify that you're feeling stressed right now and you want to make sure you're preventing burnout. So taking that approach is great. Preventative. Someone else said, what are some best practices to incorporate into my work days to prevent physical burnout? Are there specific exercises that you recommend for managing work-related stress?
Yes, so this is a great question. So one of the things that we do most of the time is do this, which we're sitting, right? So sitting is probably one of the worst things for stress and burnout because our bodies were made to move. So if at all possible in your workday, I would try to change the energy. So I'm sitting here on my third Zoom call, whatever, it's my day, my fourth or fifth patient. And at the end of that, I'm drained because I'm sitting, right? So what I want to do is maybe move, take the stairs, go outside if I have 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Movement is very, very, very important. Change your energy. If you have your own space, do jumping jacks, do a downward dog, do something that's going to move the blood flow to your brain. There's a 4-minute video from Zach Bush, which I'll send you, which if you have, it's fine if you don't have your own room, but it's fine because it uses 16 muscle groups in 4 minutes. And it's about just exercising. It increases nitric oxide, opens your blood vessels, gets juice to flowing to all your organs, and you feel great. You feel like you just did a shot of espresso. 4 minutes. Wow. Or you do a downward dog. You get that blood flow to your brain. Downward dog is that yoga position where you're bending over, or a forward fold. That's what I do sometimes when I have 2 minutes between patients. I'll just do a forward fold or I'll just jump up and down. You want to change your energy because that lack of movement is so hard on our bodies. So if you're at your work desk, you can also breathe. Just the sense of breathing, which is like a 4-7-8 breath is what I teach most of my patients, which is you breathe in for 4 and you hold for 7 and you exhale for 8. And you can do that maybe 5 times in a row. It takes less than a minute. And you do that and your energy changes. You activate your vagal tone. You lower your cortisol. You've lowered your blood pressure. You're just in a different state. Or you close your eyes and you just take some deep breaths. Breathe in for 4, breathe out for 4, and do that maybe 10 times. And then you've changed your energy. You've changed your space. Your mind is in a different state. It's calmer. It's collected. It's not in that frantic, sympathetic, I'm on fire zone, right? So one thing I would say is find something that you can do, a couple of different tools that you can do in the middle of your workday, on your way to work, on your way back from work, that you can do that are simple, not a gym class. You don't even need a gym in your job, but changing your energy and using your breath, which you always have with you. If you have the luxury of closing your eyes and just kind of doing a 10-minute meditation, amazing. It's an amazing recharge to your day. So those are the simple concepts, but you'll find your own way because you'll find those tools. My personal take home for everyone who's watching is start a daily practice of something, 20 minutes if you can, at the end of the day. You may not be able to do that today because you're already like, my gosh, she's making me give 10, 20 more minutes in my crazy day. I don't have 20 minutes. So just start with 4-7-8. Start with doing a down dog. There's a wonderful yoga exercise, which I'm ridiculous showing you, but it's called Yoga for the Brain. And you have to hold your right hand here and the left hand here. You stand up. Yeah. Way down, you breathe in. On the way up, you breathe out.
Oh, wow. What are you doing squats?
15 times.
Is that squats or you're sitting down and standing?
I'm a squat. I'm squatting and sitting.
Amazing.
It's called Yoga for the Brain. You can YouTube it. So I went to school in India.
Like that.
Yeah, just like this, because you're basically crossing your body, which means you're invoking both sides of the hemisphere of your brain. And when both sides of the hemisphere connect and they're engaged, your whole body just goes. And it just is so calming and relaxing. In fact, when I went to school in India, they used to use, and I thought they did that, they put people like misbehaving kids in the corner and they had to do that 15 times. And I always thought it was punishment, but it actually calmed them down.
Wow.
Now they're using it in, kids with ADHD. They're using it as behavioral modification in a kind way, but also it gives power back to the child to say, I have a tool now that will make me calmer. And so yoga for the brain is wonderful. It's squats, so it'll make your muscles move. It's 15 times. I've done it and people think I'm insane in front of people, but I really think you should try it because it is so fabulous. You're gonna be like, wow, I cannot believe how much better I feel. So those are the simple things you can start doing on your way to getting a 20-minute practice.
But those, once you start feeling the effect of those, it will make you understand. I believe, and this has happened to me with lots of different practices and for different reasons, is then you start to realize, of course I could fit 20 minutes into my day.
Yes.
When you feel the benefit, when you get that, it's like when you say to a busy person, do something for 20 minutes, it's like, but once you feel it, and that breathing exercise you explained is, like you said, a great way to start. Because I always find when I'm overwhelmed, whether it's I've realized I'm behind on tasks or I've got a busy day ahead and I don't know how I'm going to get everything done. I could put things over to tomorrow, but my brain doesn't allow me to say that in the moment. I find that I hold my breath a bit. Like I don't realize it until I sigh or exhale because of something. And I'm like, why was I clenching? Why was I holding? Like, okay,
everybody does it.
But why am I also not breathing?
Well, because you don't have someone to tell you to breathe, right? Because we forget. I mean, we're not going to not breathe to the point where we're going to pass out, but we're not breathing breaths that are healing for us. So I will to give you a small story because I treat a lot of hypertension patients and most of my patients don't want to take medications. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but the point is I try to do things that are safe. Sometimes we use medications and we use other techniques. So I talk about breathing and meditation all day long from the first day I meet someone. However, now there's a tool, there's a machine that's called Respirate. And I've been starting to recommend this to some of my patients. And it literally is a machine that says breathe. So you buy this machine and it tells you breathe in, breathe out, and literally do this for 15 minutes because the machine tells you to breathe. And the people who are using this are coming back and saying, that's a magic machine. My blood pressure is X amount lower. And I said, I know, because you're breathing. And we've talked about why the breath lowers your blood pressure. But they're like, no, you don't understand. This machine is magic.
Amazing. And
so
what's it called again?
People need Respirate.
Respirate.
And sometimes people need a tool, right? And HeartMath is a tool. HeartMath is also a company online that helps you coordinate your breath with your heart rate. Also a great tool for people who are like, I don't know what to do. I don't understand this breath thing. I don't have 15 minutes. So you'll have a gadget. If you're a gadget person, you can use a gadget like Respirate or HeartMath to help you with those concepts until you get to the point where you can do it on your own. Or get you the buy-in, because the other thing people are using is Oura rings. And it's so funny, even my staff member says, the Oura ring looks at heart rate variability. And heart rate variability is a great tool for you because when your heart rate variability is high, it means your parasympathetic tone is higher. Heart rate variability looks at this variability between sympathetic and parasympathetic, and you want it to be high because it tells you your parasympathetic side. So my staff member the other day literally was like, I'm wearing this Oura ring and I was really stressed out. And I did that breathing technique you said, and my heart rate variability went up. And I said, yeah. And she's like, no, you don't understand. It went up. I was like, I know, because your parasympathetic went up. I know. We talk about this all day with everyone. She goes, no, you don't understand. It actually works.
It's funny the way that, like, we know a lot of
gadgets, and it's fine. So maybe for people who feel like they're stressed, they get the Oura ring, and you'll see some of these activities will help you raise your heart rate variability, which means you're raising your parasympathetic tone. You're lowering your cortisol. You're lowering your adrenaline. You're getting to the path where your body feels safe. You're changing the distance between sympathetic overdrive and parasympathetic. You're raising this, so the symptoms will get less.
Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah. Simple. As soon as
hard.
I know it's hard to get. It's those things. It's simple, but it's hard to get a grasp on.
But that's why you start small. And I have been in these shoes too, because I could not imagine getting up 20 minutes earlier and doing a meditation practice. But I started doing it because my colleague, who's a general surgeon, came into my office and said, "This is what we're going to do." And she made me promise to do it for 30 days, and I did. And by the end of that 30 days, I was like, I have to get up because every day is better. Every day is just better when you do the morning routine, you know? And so I think people will just get energized by the fact that just try some of these small things and you'll just notice that your day's better. You'll notice you're coming home with a little bit more energy, not as
Exactly.
exhausted.
Even just a walk before your day starts. Yeah.
Exactly. Sunshine, right.
Exactly. And we've got another question that I feel might be a little bit similar, but I'm still going to ask it because it could just be how I'm reading it. So somebody asked, I'm going non-stop throughout my workday and I'm exhausted and out of energy by the time I get home to my family. How can I better maintain my physical health amidst the constant demands of work? So the exhaustion and the energy loss happens when they get home.
Oh, right. So you're on adrenaline. So if you think about what you just told me, you are driving on adrenaline at the job because that's your first job. Then your second job, by the time you get to your second job, your tank is low. It's gone. You're going on fumes. So how, again, same concept. We have to increase the gas in your tank. We have to energize you. So small practices during the day. It is not a light switch. You can't run like that and then say, I'm going to turn on this light switch for my parasympathetic and it's going to be on when I get home. We have to do small things during the day. Some of these interventions during the day, drink more water, walk a little bit more. Don't get so drained during the day. So then when you come home at night, we need structure at home too. So it's the thing about home stuff is get a plan. So on Sunday with your family, allocate what's for dinner, who's making it, who's taking the kids where, what is my job description? Because it's so overwhelming. One of the hardest things to do when we're overwhelmed is to delegate and task. We need structure to say, okay, I'm coming home and I'm putting this in the oven and that's what's going to happen. It's like you have to decrease choices, basically. We can't have so many choices to make. We only are, every day is only full of so many choices.
And you freeze up when
you've already expended them by the time you get home. You have to make home a very non-thinking part of your day. Basically, the dinner's done or it's going to be done because I already planned it. The groceries are done. This one's going to take this one to soccer. I'm going to be able to do this, whatever it is, because we can't come home and say, oh, there's no pasta. What am I supposed to make tonight? That is going to be so exhausting. That's going to deplete your tank so much more because it is your second job. You're not done yet, right? You're going from the first job to the second job. You have to have just as enough energy for that second job, but it's not as demanding in the sense because you're probably the CEO of the house. So you can create that environment. And so what I would suggest you do is start planning a little bit during the day. Ideally, you'll make some of these small changes so that you're not as depleted. But when you get, maybe even before you get out of the car, you sit there and you breathe that 4, 7, 8, 5 times in a row before you get out of the car and enter your home. Just take a pause, take a little break. And then as you enter the house, it'll be okay, right? It'll be okay. We just have to get through this part. And you cannot tell your body that you're still in danger. You're not running from a tiger when you get home. It may not be the most beautiful dinner, may not be the most perfect dinner, but nobody's going to starve. Right? So we're not in a famine. I think the mindset is also really important, that it doesn't have to be perfect. Yeah. It's going to be the best I can do. And unlike me, which I learned very much into my life, get help. Get your kids doing stuff. Yeah. Get people in the home to help you. You can't be everything.
Learn to delegate at home.
Delegate. It's so important, right? Because we feel like we have to do everything all the time for everyone. And so part of it is that mindset of you will get burnt out. That is a burnout at home too.
Yeah.
Because it's exhausting. So reallocate, strategize, and take a pause before you get to your second job.
Yeah. I love what you said about the transition time. So like when you're in the car and you're about to go in, and you just have that moment to just do a few of the breathing exercises, because I remember when I think back now, it was probably one of the first real experiences I had with burnout. And funnily enough, I used to describe it as, I feel like I was in a depressive episode. I say to people, I'm not going to label it as it was depression, but when I think about this time, I feel like I was going through a depressive episode. But I think it was burnout. And I discovered it was probably burnout, because what I used to do is I used to have a really high pressure job in sales, real high pressure. And I was a business development manager. So there was a lot I had to do. And what I also learned to do was to create a to-do list for my evening, so that when I get home, there's things that I was doing. I was transitioning from working full-time, I was doing coaching on the side, and I was transitioning into one day leaving my 9 to 5 and doing coaching full-time. But it meant that I did have 2 jobs, actually. I didn't have a family that I had to look after, but I did have to now put some energy into my coaching and into my, setting myself up for my future. But what I found is the work day, I would charge myself up full of coffee, and so that I could be, a charismatic salesperson. And then I would leave with, before I'd leave my job, I would just note down the things that I want to do at home before dinner. Just so, because dinner, whenever I would eat, it would make me instantly get into cozy mode, and my body would just say, it's time to shut down now. I couldn't eat dinner and then work. I hadn't trained my body to do that. And so I'd write these things down, but the transition between getting home, I would spend the whole train journey scrolling online, looking at the internet, catching up on messages that I didn't see when I was at work. And by the time I got home off that train, I could not get up once I sat down.
I'm really glad you said that, because I did want to press on one thing, which I learned a few years ago that I thought was life-changing for me. Stress is not the problem. It's the lack of recovery that's the problem. Okay? Stress is not the problem. So on your train ride, you were still working. You did not have a moment where you shut things down. You didn't recover. You didn't invoke that parasympathetic. In the wild, when animals go for their kill, their heart rate goes up, their adrenaline goes up, and then once they get their kill, they pass out on the side. I don't know if you've ever seen cross-country runners. It's really funny. Like, they run really hard, and I saw a bunch of boys in my son's school. They go to the finish line really hard, and they just pass out on the side. Like all of them just pass out on the ground, and they're just exhausted. And I was like, good, you're recovering. But we never do that in life. We're going 100 miles an hour. You're on that train. You're still going, but you're going at 80 miles an hour. Then you're going, and you come to home and you're at 60 miles an hour. And soon that tank is going to be depleted. Yep. So every single thing is going to be less efficient. Your performance is going to be less in each capacity. And you're going to feel like garbage doing everything, right? So part of it is just, people remember this, it's not the stressor. Sometimes we can't control those. It's the lack of recovery that's the problem. If we start looking at the recovery part, the rest and digest part, what can I do to create silence and quiet in my life? On that train ride, it'll be really hard if I could take you back to that self and said to you, turn off your phone. You'd be like, are you insane? I can't turn my phone off. But if you turned off the phone for 5 minutes, maybe you could do that. Maybe you could turn it off, not for the whole ride, but for the 5 minutes part of the ride. Just sit there and you think.
I probably would have loved to have been told. Like you said earlier, no one's telling you to breatd. I used to love when my phone, I'm not going to...
would die.
Yeah, I used to love when my phone died, or when I'd get like an upgrade, but I hadn't yet crossed them over. Sometimes it's like a 2-day period where I haven't done it yet, and I would love it.
So you're different than most of my clients, because I tell them that they need to shut their phone off, and they look at me horrified, like, what are you talking about? It's my lifeline. I can't do that. But I think the issue is that we need we need quiet and silence. We need more calm and quiet. So if you can find those moments, and women do this, I don't know, maybe men too, but we stay up later and sacrifice our sleep sometimes because it's quiet. It's like my time. Right? And so that's it sounds amazing because, everybody's down and I have my time now. They're quiet, but you're sacrificing sleep, which is so important.
Yeah.
So important. So I always ask people to try to find that quiet time during the daytime hours, because it's so important not to sacrifice your sleep.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Now, we had 2 questions come in from an employer. I feel like it might have been the same person, but it could have been 2 people. But I'll ask each one individually. So this person runs a company and has asked, what proactive steps can I take to help my employees prevent burnout and maintain physical wellness at work?
I love that question. I really love that question because...
Sorry.
I love that because I learned a lot of this from Arianna Huffington, who wrote the book Thrive. And basically she was, she's a hugely empowered woman who has lots and lots of people looking at her and takes care of a lot of things and companies and things like that. But it basically got to the point where she was burnt out. Her story was a burnout story. And she says that it's got to come from top down. So thank you for the question, because I feel like if the owner of the company, the employer, is completely stressed out of their mind and they're always walking around on eggshells and tense, and that will permeate through the entire company. So the first thing I would do is, as the owner, I would say, or the employer that hires everyone, look at yourself and how you're showing up. Because if you're depleted, if you're burnt out, it's going to be a totally different message that you're giving. So if you can try to employ some self-care to you, it'll be much more impactful while you're initiating things like flexible work schedule, basically working from home remotely, maybe adding a meditation room or a gym into your corporation, or even prioritizing health by saying, we're not expecting you to be 24/7. I'm not going to send you an email at Saturday night at 11 p.m. expecting you to answer it, right? So it's a cultural change that should come from the top down. So that would be probably the most impactful thing than just hiring a wellness coach, which is also very important, by the way. But if the messaging isn't synchronized with the tools that you're giving people, they're going to be scared to use it.
Yeah. And the second question that came in from an employer, and it could be the same, but they said, can you share some examples of effective workplace wellness programs?
So, because I'm not complete, I'm in a different work setting, but I know that things that are very, very keen for people are having flexibility, and trusting your staff to be able to use their time well. Now, ever since COVID, everybody wants remote ability so that they can get their work-life balance, whether they're taking care of their kids, their parents, or just being able to do their dry cleaning. The flexibility of a workday is very, very important. In addition to that, I feel like some of the workplace measures that have been really nice is prioritization of maybe doing things that are team building, that are involved with mental health. So workshops, lunch and learns, things that prioritize breath work, maybe educational seminars, things that are educating the staff about, and the management about, how to look for signs of burnout, recognizing those signs and jumping on them, and seeing if the workplace is conducive to a wellness culture, right? So having toxicity there, every culture, every workplace has something, every home has something. It's not, but it's recognizing it and kind of giving people tools to say, I see you, I recognize that you're having a hard time, and these are the things that we have in place here to help you, whether that's a coach or a gym, or just time in the day from 12 to 1. No one's expected to do meetings or work. A cultural shift of just say, go outside, spend some time in the sun, go have lunch and come back. Because we know that if people who are more whole in the sense of balanced, their performance is better. Burnout actually correlates with a really terrible performance, because also there's a loss of care for your performance, as well as self-care, but also your performance care. Then the people lack at the time that you're burnt out, you also really don't care about the effects of what your job or how you're doing your job, because you have nothing in you to care.
Yeah.
You're depleted.
Yeah.
And it's not depression, because once you get removed, once you get the tools for nourishment, you're better. You're not depressed. And that's where the history comes in, right? So you're cruising along, all of a sudden you get this job where you have 7,000 hats. You're working 24/7. You don't even know your weekend. Then you get a second job, and all of a sudden 3 months later, you're a different person. You don't even recognize yourself. It's not all of a sudden you got clinically depressed, right? It's this burnout.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm looking forward to us reaching out to hopefully the person who sent that in, their company and other companies, to help create these programs, because then hopefully Dr. Rao can be imparting some of this into your workplace as part of a Linden House program.
That's wonderful. I do think that there's a lot of, especially in the States, there's a lot of pressure to work because I think the average person here gets 2 weeks off, right? So it's brutal. It's brutal. And I used to work in New York where people used to drop their kids off in daycare at 6:30 in the morning and not pick them up till 7 p.m. And then they have to go home and do their second job, which is take care of the kid and make the dinner. It is a brutal life. And so part of it is just recognizing that this is not a sustainable model, just like our residency programs changed in terms of the hours that we are able to kind of ask the residents to work now, which has happened over the years. We also need to recognize it as a cultural shift in every place of work. And I think people need to recognize, as women, I've lectured to a lot of women business organizations because women tend to take things on a lot. They have their first job, they don't even recognize their home job as a second job. And they're putting just as much into that second job, whether it's just taking care of the home, buying groceries, whatever. It doesn't have to be kids, anything. It's just there's a second job when you get home. And so part of it is just nourishing ourselves and keeping ourselves well. So if we just think about the concept of stress isn't the problem, it's the lack of recovery, and work on recovery tools. Whatever that is for you. I would love for everyone to have a morning routine. I would love everyone to have 10 minutes to meditate during the middle of the day. And take a walk and be out in sunshine. One other thing I'll just say real quick is exercise seems to be the way people cope. Everyone says, when I ask, what do you do for stress? They say, I exercise. But remember that a very hard, intense workout is not actually repleting you. It is good. It helps your resilience. It helps you kind of combat the stress you're under. Building muscle mass is very good for stress. But it isn't necessarily things like yoga or Pilates or even swimming, because it involves breath. Even weightlifting, when you're doing the, breathing in, breathing out type of things, that's actually a yogic type of practice. But when you are doing a high intensity workout, you are maybe depleting yourself a little bit more too. So for the weekend warriors who train really hard on the weekends, they work really hard during the weekdays, that workout may not be the workout for building up yourself. Maybe adding some yoga, maybe adding some breath work, maybe adding some things that are like Pilates or bar class is another tool to add to an exercise, because people love to exercise for stress. But changing what that workout looks like for people.
Yeah, amazing. That's how I start with nearly all of the coaching that I do, is making positive changes, and the first one is creating a morning routine.
Great.
Because you can fit so much into it. All of the positive changes that are needed, even if you've only got 20 minutes, like you said, 5 minutes of breathing, 10 minutes meditation, and a short walk, or some journaling, or planning your day, just having that time. It's so important. So I'm so glad that you included that. Thank you. And finally, before we go, can you share a little bit about what excites you about being part of the Linden House community?
Oh my goodness, so many things. I am very excited to meet people like you and people like Chima, who are just lovely. I mean, I've never met you in person, but the energy that comes from, I feel like the people who work with you is going to be so positive. And I do think energy matters. That's why I said when people feel down, you need to pump yourself up, and you can walk into a room and kind of already know what that interaction is going to be like. And I already feel everybody I've met at Linden House has that incredible positive energy, which is contagious. I also am really excited to bring forth knowledge and education, because it's what I love. And in my 30 years of medicine, most of what I learned was outside of medical school. And I think they were more profound in terms of healing and keeping people alive longer, doing the things they love. And the networking abilities with this community, I think, are amazing. But also the educational opportunities to be able to kind of impart some of the knowledge that I've learned along the way would be fabulous, to be able to kind of get that out to the world, to be able to understand that we have so much control. And when I've learned it along my journey, I just kind of want to jump up on a rooftop and start screaming it to people.
Everything I learn, I want to do like a whole.
It's so fabulous. You're like, you got to know this, you got to do this. It's so amazing. So that's kind of how I feel about being part of Linden House. It's going to give me the ability to work with people that are like-minded, with the energy that just drives me, and also is contagious to be around people like you guys, and to be able to impart this knowledge to larger groups. and also help my local community as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's just a few things. I've only been part of you guys
Yeah.
for months, so I'm sure I'll
We
have
can't wait.
7,000 more things.
Yeah, we can't wait. We're so happy to have you, and so happy to share this as well. I think this has been a great conversation, and there are so many gems. Literally, this interview alone is just going to be such a gift to anybody that sees it. So
Oh,
I
thank
look
you.
forward to when we share it, and speaking to you
Okay.
again soon.
Thank you, Penny. Have a great day.
You
Okay.
too.
Bye.
Speak soon.